very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. So.
Well, it's a beautiful Monday morning, a public holiday at that. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
Happy Eid al-Kabir to our Muslim brothers and sisters. Good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Indeed, Eid Mubarak to all those who are celebrating and to all of us on holidays. Good morning from Abuja. I'm Maokwe Yusuf.
Did you say all of us on holiday?
I thought I heard that too.
Okay. Point noted. For all of us on holiday. All right. So we might as well just go ahead and take you through some of the dailies today. Today we'll start with NewsDirect. Taking a look at the lead story, just a fallback from yesterday, what transpired. And look at the big lead on the front page of NewsDirect today. Knocks and kudos over Shetima's nomination as Tinubu's running mate. We are ready to protect Christians' interests, ascribed to CAN. Decision and insult to fairness, equity, justice. Aisha. Tinubu, Shetima are moderate Muslims. Ikechuku. Wisest choice by Tinubu, Zulum. My decision beyond community, religious sentiments, Tinubu. So you get hold of that for a while. Who knows how long, but it's a long time to that big general elections date. So this is the big one here today. And ahead of Osun elections, IGP assures electorate of adequate security, deploys DIG senior officers as expected, I might add. Well, that's NewsDirect today.
Well, take a look at Leadership newspaper. Follows up with that one. 29 years after Abiola Kingibe, Tinubu resurrects Muslim ticket, picks Shetima as running mate. So that's how Leadership newspaper leads this morning. But take a look at the riders. That's what you had there. Masari resigns as VP placeholder. Why Ashiwaju settled for former Borno governor. Pits Northwest as battleground for 2023 poll. And you see that picture that shows President Buhari flanked by the APC's presidential candidate, the governor of Katsina State, and others yesterday, where the announcement was made. So, well, it looks like we're in full swing now, the race to 2023. But take a look at what you find on top of a nameplate. Unaccounted 10 billion naira. Senate issues arrest warrant on amnesty officials. So, yeah, that's what you have there. You might want to read for more details. And you see this one, retired security personnel at 70, Matawale tells federal government. So amidst all of the politicking and stuff, we have very, very real challenges with us. And I'll just mention this, high operating costs. SMEs ask for tax holidays, regulatory forbearance. I mean, SMEs are going through a lot, I must tell you. That's the Leadership newspaper.
From the Leadership newspapers this morning, let's turn our focus towards Daily Trust. Let's hold on a bit. Daily Trust newspapers this morning, and it's wearing a new look, as Kayode observed earlier on, perhaps in the spirit of Eid Mubarak.
Or maybe just a general rebranding.
Maybe. All right, the big story says families paid 800 million naira to secure release of 7 Kaduna captives. 800 million naira. That's no child's play. Let's take a look at the riders. Ransom paid in dollars, naira.
Wow.
How Boko Haram partnered bandits for train attack. Captors behind Kuje jailbreak. They jubilated on return. That's according to a freed captive. And it's a journey to Valley of Death, released FCT UBEC director. If you want more details of that story, you'll find it on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. That's one big story that you may want to take a look at. Now, let's go to beneath the nameplate of the Daily Trust newspapers. You find the political story, why I chose Shetima as running mate, Tinubu 2023. High expectations as NNPC takes off as corporate body. And just by the extreme right-hand corner, you see this one. Despite concerns, fan finally shuts Lagos Airport domestic runway. That's bound to come with a lot of consequences, but we'll see how that goes. And finally, one more political story before we exit Daily Trust. PDP crisis. Atiku returns to lead Osun governorship campaign. Interesting. That's the Daily Trust newspapers for you this morning. Welcome.
Well, indeed, Bookie, Daily Trust, they changed their front page. This is sometime about 2 weeks ago and announced that they had done a rebranding. So you're going to be seeing Daily Trust that way in terms of their mast, their nameplate. It's going to look that way from henceforth. They announced this, I think, about 2 weeks ago, and it's been like that for quite a while. But let's take a look at what Vanguard has on the front page for you, and you see it right there. APC VP slot, why I opted for Muslim-Muslim ticket. That's according to Tinubu. Why I chose Shetima. ACF chieftain faults Tinubu on running mate. It's dangerous to Nigeria's unity. That's from CAN, MBF, PFN. With Shetima, Tinubu has made the wisest choice. That's from Zulum. Shetima is perfect as Tinubu's running mate, says Keyamo. So that story is on page 5 for you. The story and the reactions to the actual story is on page 5 for you. Energy crisis, power supply fails to meet federal government's 5,500 megawatts target. Why that is, you might want to flip to page 9. I mean, this is us being told that we're heading towards 11,000 megawatts from 7,000, which we were capable of producing. All we had to do was, fix the transmission lines to be able to ensure that people were able to feel this electricity in their homes. Now we're looking at a review of 5,500 megawatts, and it looks like we're still struggling to meet that. You might want to read details of the story on page 9. There's also this, Pope Francis denies resignation rumors, that was there. And insecurity, federal government has failed Nigerians, that's from Catholic priests. Federal government berated for blocking Benue's 56 billion naira loan for payment of salaries, pension, and insecurity. Get licensed guns, protect yourselves, Archbishop tells Nigerians. So all of those stories around the problem of insecurity. Well, you have a number of other stories on top of the nameplate, at the back page as well, because there is sports on the back page, something to cheer you a little. Falcons wallop Burundi, set up quarterfinal clash against Cameroon. Our girls doing us proud wherever it is they're going. And then, of course, you also have your Mr. and Mrs. and very interesting Mr. and Mrs. We were talking about population commission the other day. You might want to pick up a copy of the Vanguard. I know what Mr. and Mrs. are discussing this morning, but Mr. doesn't even want Mrs. visiting anyone, has just had children. Let's leave it there for the Vanguard newspapers.
Yeah, and about that story about bandits paying, families paying 800 million naira. It almost comes across as though this is some sort of compensation for this terrorist, because the rate at which they make this kind of money is seemingly uninhibited. One just wonders. We'll take a look at New Telegraph today. 2023 presidential race. APC set as Tinubu names Shetima running mate. That's the big one right there. And then you see at the bottom strip, Archbishop tells Christians, get legal arms, protect yourselves. Laments insecurity, blames it on FG's negligence. Carlo urges Southeast governors, traditional rulers, others to end insecurity in region. So, who knows if they'll just pay lip service to all of this. So there you go. That is it with a look at some of the dailies here today. Don't forget, you can send in your comments to us. We'll appreciate all of them. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us.
The All Progressives Congress presidential candidate arrives the country home of President Muhammad Buhari in Daura, a few kilometers away from the state's capital, for the traditional Salah homage. President Muhammad Buhari receives the candidates of the party and his entourage. Although it is supposed to be the traditional Salah homage to the president, the APC presidential candidate, Senator Tinubu, announces his choice of a running mate and the reason behind his choice.
Well, we had a very good period of the season, this time of the year, and to really pay homage to him and then share part of his holiday and lunch, and equally discuss the question of my running mate, substantia. One of them withdraw today. I mean, the only one that was in place as a replacement withdraw today, and there'll be already an announcement to replace him fully with a substantive,
The substantive one.
Kashim Shettima. I have not discussed with him. I've disclosed it to you. Since I've disclosed it to the president.
No, that's...
Because he competent, capable, reliable, and able.
Beyond his choice of a running mate, Senator Tinubu highlights the plan of the party to address the challenges being faced by the country.
Because we are a progressive party, we have the focus on Nigeria problems. We face the challenge squarely. We are not running away from it. We have a better program for the people and about the people and ready to serve. Within a short period of time, there'll be a good foundation on infrastructure. We face challenges of terrorism, we know that. It's only, a poor thinker and observer will not recognize the challenge. But once you recognize the challenge, you can prepare yourself very well to tackle it and defeat it.
With the announcement of Senator Kashim Shettima as the substantive running mate to Senator Bola Tinubu, the All Progressives Congress appears set to tackle all other political parties for the #1 job come February 2023.
Welcome back. Well, yes, both gentlemen will be joining us to weigh in on this subject matter. Of course, you can always send your reactions to us while the program is on. We'll do what we can to get your voices heard. But what a scenario it's turning out to be the 2023 presidential elections, guys.
Absolutely. I know that this has been, given to speculations for quite some time. What will they be? What will they not be? And I usually tell people, just take a chill pill. You find out eventually. But now it's been unveiled, and as you said, it's happened now. And there's been lots of reactions to this one. You heard the candidate saying it's a progressive party. This is meant to solve the problems of Nigeria, as it were. So this morning, we're analyzing all of that for you, not forgetting the responses we have gotten across board from those for it, against it, those undecided, those who aren't even looking at that side anyway. So it's a mix of different things. I'm particularly actually looking forward to this conversation? Because as one of the dailies put it, it's how many years after, June 12? About
25.
25 or 29 years after June 12. So some have said the spirit of June 12 again is upon us, and the questions are, really?
Well, it's a candidate that said that actually in his speech.
Oh, there you go.
The spirit of June 12 is upon us.
So, big one,
definitely.
Really?
Well, and then it's interesting to
Okay.
also note that the candidate said he's just disclosing it, that the picked, the preferred running mate has not been notified himself. And that's, a surprise for me, because I can't forget too soon how the now picked running mate campaigned for the candidacy of the APC presidential candidate vehemently, on television, in fact, vociferously, to the extent that it seemed that he cast a bit of aspersion on, the other aspirants in the race.
I
So
think you're referring to Vice President
is it
Jimmy
really
Osinbajo.
just getting to know on national television?
And would you really say no to such?
Well, look, we read that last week, previously, how they had settled for him. So if he's just getting to know now, well, what can we say? Well, let's go over now to where the guests are. Mark?
Chamberlain, indeed, that's what we're sinking our teeth into. We have with us Mr. Muazu Magaji, who is a former member of the APC Presidential Campaign Council. He is a member of the PDP right now and also the director, Sahelian Center for Leadership and Development. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Barakada Salah to you.
Barakada Salah to you. Thank you so
We're able
much.
to drag you out this beautiful
It's the season now. So,
Salah holiday.
absolutely.
And then we also have with us Mr. Daniel Bwala, who is a barrister at Lincoln's Inn, London, and also a political analyst. Gentlemen, welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you.
Well, so for some people, this is no surprise. Immediately, Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu was able to pick his party's ticket as the front runner for the party, as the presidential candidate for his party. The next question became running mate, and then we saw the controversy break loose. And there was a lot of talk around Muslim-Muslim ticket, and there was a lot of talk around, just how to break it down. Yeah. But eventually, after weeks of suspense, this is what we have now been, revealed to see. I mean, we've been led to see. Did this come as any surprise to either of you? Let me start from you, Mr. Muazu.
Well, honestly, I am not surprised because the calculations of winning in the APC, it's a very difficult one without the Muslim-Muslim ticket. Technically speaking, a lot of the opinion in the party is to try and get a credible, popular, and winnable vice presidential candidate from the North who is a Christian. For the simple reason of the sentiments and emotions that are attached to politics in Nigeria, and also the very near split that the country is basically set up right from formation. I think a lot of work has gone into that search. A lot of dynamics, a lot of permutations, a lot of comparison were done. At the end of the day, I think the candidate himself decided to bite the bullet. And if you look at the other candidates, and if you compare the combination of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a Muslim from the south, and a Christian from the north, the mathematics hardly add up. A lot of work needs to be done, and it's a game of chance. So the probability of winning, because politics is about winning, it's higher with a Muslim-Muslim ticket, especially if you look at the other major opposition party, have a Muslim from the north, so you want to kind of encroach into his territory and take a large chunk of the vote. So it's almost an inevitable reality, but it's a very difficult decision to take. I must say, it's been looked at very critically, and it's now up to Nigerians to look at the ticket. The candidate has given his reasons why he has put a Muslim on the ticket, and a lot of Nigerians, some have actually protested, some have resigned their positions, but you will get reactions irrespective of how he actually proceeds. But I hope that we will end up with a peaceful transition, irrespective of the choice of Nigerians, because there is consequence on this decision, whichever way Tinubu decides.
Well, it's been a pretty tough choice for almost all of the presidential candidates, it would seem. This particular election seems to be particularly problematic. I don't know why. If you look at the decision for the PDP candidate, even the Labour Party just announced his candidate without much controversy, thankfully, on Friday here. But that of the APC and the PDP has proved particularly problematic. Do you think that this has gone down well for the APC from what you have seen?
Well, I don't think that decision, so to speak, is a good news to APC. And I will respectfully differ from my senior brother here by giving you a scenario very similar to this, but the party chose to do the right thing. In 2014, the party was very desperate to win election. President Muhammadu Buhari, then General Muhammadu Buhari, was to choose a vice presidential candidate. And at the time, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was the strongest and most influential politician in the party who brought a lot to the table. And there was this idea that President Buhari, then General Buhari, and Asiwaju were to fly the ticket together. Now, that was a situation where, let's say, General Buhari was to make a decision based on fear. That, look, if I don't pick Asiwaju, we are not likely to win, because that was the threat at the time. But President Buhari was reported to have stood his position and maintained that that is not right. Muslim ticket or Christian ticket is not good for the country at this moment. And he chose the other way. As a matter of fact, he told Asiwaju to bring a candidate. Funny enough, to again differ with what my senior brother here said about winning, and that the northern voters, they are very probably sentimental about that. The choice of Professor Yemi Osinbajo at the time was to be interpreted as spelling doom for Buhari, because Professor Yemi at the time was not an active politician. In fact, he was reported to have said he was even planning to appear in Supreme Court the next day for a matter. A pastor, a non-active politician, and from the southwest, where President Buhari needed the votes in the first place to win, because all through these years he's been contesting, he has always had his votes from the north. He badly needed the vote from the south. He chose the right thing. Eisenhower said, any political party that does not have its policy rooted in the understanding of advancing a cause that is right and that is moral, that political party is not a political party, but merely a conspiracy to seize power. You see, at every given time in political history, you need to make a decision on what is right. Now, in this scenario, I give you an instance. The myth behind the need to choose a Muslim candidate is that if you don't do that, the northern Muslim voters will not vote for that candidate. That is a creation or a notion that exists in the imagination of politicians who have interests, but it does not resonate with the conviction of the voters. Because historically, from 1999 till today, nobody has won election without the support and the vote of the northern voters, and especially the northern Muslim voters. They chose Jonathan over Buhari in 2011. They chose Jonathan over Atiku in 2011. If they were choosing along religious lines, they would have gone for either of these two. The northern voters vote on the basis of political party conviction or interest. The idea that they are being roped into saying that they will not vote if you choose a vice presidential candidate who is a Christian is a creation of the imagination of politicians who particularly have interest in this game, but not necessarily a reflection of the votes of the people. Otherwise, the Islamic clerics, if you look at last week, they have cautioned against a same faith-based ticket. If you look at the newspaper last week throughout Thursday, 75% of the newspaper tore along the same line. Prominent members of the government also advised that you have to balance the ticket. Now, even political parties that we consider mushroom, they are balancing the ticket.
So you have resigned your membership of the All Progressives Congress based on this?
Yeah.
Why have you done that?
Well, principally my participation and activities in APC has always been that of projecting and defending the interests of the party. So one way or the other, if I stay in the party, I will be confronted with having to make a comment one way or the other and to defend that. And since it's a conviction that I have, and I feel that that runs against the principle that I also dear, and especially at this time of our national life where we should be moving towards uniting our people. If I stay in the party, then I will be like agitators in a political party. And what I do is I give my all in everything I do. And that's why those who have seen how, and let me even say something that is very intriguing, because somebody in our party was saying that, don't you think this is bigotry? I say, if this is bigotry, can you help interpret one fact? That I chose to support Asiwaju over Professor Yemi Osinbajo in the primaries. And Professor Yemi Osinbajo is a pastor, he's a Christian, just like me. But I chose to support him. And I chose to support him over other Christians in the political party because it is purely on the basis of performance principle and all. But when you come to the national sphere, a governing party must be a party that will lead by example. And when they took that decision, I felt I should do the honorable thing. Rather than becoming a cry baby, let me just resign from the party. And I'm happy with my decision.
Well, there has been a lot of, will I say, opinion and articles on this particular issue, the running mate. And one of the most interesting that I have seen was the article written by Mr. Azu Ishekwene, who is the editor of Leadership Newspapers, editor-in-chief. Did you see that article? I do not know if you had a chance to look at it. It talked about how the running mate has become an albatross to the APC. Did you see the article?
Yes.
Did you see the article?
No.
Just, just check in. And
Right.
quite a number of things that he said in that article. And part of it is that, he says the choice of a running mate has become even more difficult for the presidential candidate of the APC because of how the current president has managed the religious differences in the country.
Oh, I see.
He said, let me read verbatim what he said. He says, let me be clear, Buhari did not introduce identity politics into the country, nor is identity politics a peculiarly Nigerian thing. On his watch in the last 7 years, however, ethnic and religious politics have taken on a salience and frequency hardly experienced before or even thought likely.
Right.
He also, it's a pretty extensive article, but essentially argues that the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress did not have a chance if he picked a Christian as his running mate as vice president. It was going to be a really tough decision for the APC if they had gone down the route of picking a Christian vice presidential candidate.
In other words, they choose politics over unity. That's what it means. You see, after the Civil War in 1969, in 1970, there was this national objective that was formulated. The idea behind that was to bring Nigerians into one nation and build a nation with shared prosperity. Some of the concepts in the national objective is inclusivity, it is tolerance, it is self-reliance, it is common prosperity, and diversity. Diversity.
So the question I'm going to ask you is, do you think that northern Muslims, which is the question, you have argued that they vote along interests, etc.
Right.
But do you think that in the ticket, assuming Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu had picked a vice presidential candidate who was Christian, do you think that they would have seen themselves represented on his ticket?
Yes, because what they do is they look at political party interests. They do not particularly vote along religious lines. It's the myth that politicians use. You see, it is the anti-objective of Sardauna of Sokoto, Sir Ahmadu Bello. Because Sir Ahmadu Bello was the one that founded the philosophy of the northernization. That philosophy is hinged on the belief that if you are from the north by origin, irrespective of your religion or tribe, you are one north. So they would have considered that Christian candidate as a northerner and not as a Christian northerner. And historically, by their votes, they approved it.
This is in spite of all that has been going on in the north in the last couple of years and the extensive divisions that have flared up,
Right.
and the suspicion that now currently reigns between northern Christians and northern Muslims. I'm sure you must have seen a lot of the controversy from farmer herders crisis to the plots to take over land, etc., etc.
Right.
Do you think that that still remains as people still seeing themselves as northerners?
I honestly believe, and let me tell you, people don't vote because of the vice president. Look at, I gave you an example of Professor Yemi Osinbajo. If we are to go by that, then APC will not have won the election in 2015. Because he was a zero politician at the time.
Okay, let me come to Mr. Mwazu now. this certainly, I mean, people like, there are lots of people. He is representative of a class of people who are certainly going to be feeling very offended by this selection.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be, for a number of people, they believe it's going to even drive a wedge of suspicion even deeper. The APC had a problem when it was coming in 2014. Part of the campaign against it was that it was a Muslim party. And it would seem that it is entrenching that right now with the choice of a vice presidential candidate who is a Muslim as well. And now you now have a Muslim-Muslim ticket. How do you think that they could sell this to the Christian minority in the North and to the majority of Christians in the South?
Well, I honestly, listening to my younger brother here, I feel there's a serious issue here. I mean, I read his resignation, and I said to myself, look, this is a double-edged sword. APC, whatever you do today, it's already a party that have a lot of liabilities. Politically, in terms of governance, in terms of program, in terms of deliveries, and then add to this very complicated decision-making. I really feel for the APC candidate, Asuwaju Bola Tinubu. In fact, when Barrister here is saying that Osibanjo was picked as a running mate, I mean, remember, at that time, it was Tinubu's that was put forward. But then Tinubu also conceded and brought in. So there was actually almost a double advantage then of having Tinubu and Osibanjo in one as vice presidential decision-making, all bought into the decision. That's an added advantage. It's not the same here. Now, the big problem now is, I sincerely believe APC is in a very deep problem here. And in some way, believe me, I moved out of APC quite a few months back, and the opposition parties have been looking forward to this crisis. They've been looking forward to this because in one way or the other, it's going to affect the fortune of the party. Now, to further show how deeply this has become, you've just highlighted the editorial of leadership. The leadership of APC after 7.5 years now has not done anything, has not done much. On the contrary, actually, has caused a lot more division in the polity than the unity you was talking about. The style of Samadou Bello's leadership is completely different from what we have witnessed in the last 7 or so years.
Very true.
Because honestly, the North he was talking about is a North that we as young kids grew up going to Christmas party in people's home, and we're receiving our Christian brothers in during Salah. Like this season, they come in, we eat ram together, and during Christmas we go and celebrate. And you know, most of the quarters around where, you know, Christians reside are places where we go and get some freedom to play. You know, it's like, it's a little more liberal than the conservative society and house that we are all brought up. This brotherhood, I have a huge number of friends that are from the East, from the West. They've grown up either in the railway quarters or in the barrack. You know, it's like, we honestly, even Northern Christian community, we honestly do not identify very well as you're a Christian, I'm a Muslim. The problem is politics are our interest. And honestly, religion has also become politicized. It's part of the game now. Ordinary people are struggling to survive. Christians, Muslims are all in this very difficult situation that APC has put the country into. So that is number one problem, that after all this problem of who is running mate, Christian, Muslim, that the candidate will have to come and face the people and say, look, you designed this merger and you promised us it's going to be a progressive social justice platform. Now, I had Asuwaju unfolding his running mate and making speeches as if it was the inaugural speech of Muhammadu Buhari 7 years ago, making exactly the same promises, progressive social changes. The word change keep repeating in his words, as if the party has not ruled this country for 7.5 years. So for me, the greatest challenge here will be, honestly, like you said, the Muslim North will go beyond this issue of religion and look at the performance of APC. And APC is going to be punished. I can tell you this, because honestly speaking, the expectation and the promises are not in tandem at all. And
this is regardless of whether or not they try to bribe with a Muslim vice presidential
that is the
candidate.
correct word. The correct word is you've taken a president from the North who is a Muslim, and you promised to bring succor to the masses, and you haven't done that. And now you're going behind religion, bringing in a running mate that is a Muslim and a candidate that is a Muslim. And when I started, I said this country is divided. And we were formed this way. And there's something he mentioned about the Islamic clerics that are preaching. You see, in Islam, when it comes to leadership, religion is not part of the equation. It is equity, it is justice, it is fairness that is in the equation. There is no way an Islamic society will embrace a Muslim tyrant leader over a non-Muslim just leader. This is not how Islam defined leadership, because leadership is a collective responsibility on humanity. Religion is your relationship with God. But when you are given responsibility over people, especially in a diverse society like Nigeria, then you have a responsibility to be fair and equitable to all. And not only that, you must assuage fear. This fear that there is going to be domination will basically catalyze some level of friction within the society. And the reason is actually the editorial is saying that there were no measures taken to show that we are equal, we are the same under the law, and in terms of the way the APC as a party ruled, it did not bridge these gaps. If it had done that, probably we would be talking about this too much.
Let's flip to Lagos now. I know my colleagues have questions. Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah, Mr. Bola, let me ask you, I know you've gone through the speech by the APC presidential flag bearer, but if you look at paragraph 27, where perhaps you're speaking to persons like you, he says, may I say to all of you, especially to those who will be disappointed in my selection based on religious considerations, I will not and cannot ignore the religious concerns and ethnic sensitivities of our people. Towards the latter part of that paragraph, it says, to forge ahead as a nation toward development and prosperity, we must break free from old binds. We must recalibrate our political calculations to where competence and fairness matter more than reductive demographics. How does this resonate with you?
Is that me?
Yes, Mr. Bola.
Right. So I read his speech. Quite frankly, this that you read, or the clause that you read, I didn't find that as a justifying one. And of course, everyone in the country knows how I invested in the project to push for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, even at the risk of my life, when I made a decision to support him. And it was purely on the basis of principles. I believe he was structurally a party man. But the idea that you know the frustration of people, but you promise you will make it up. You know, there can never be a time. Do you now go in the campaign and then do the replacement? The highest you can do between now and June, at July 16, you know, which is the window you have to do this replacement of vice presidential candidate, which I don't think it is going to happen. You know, so I am really. Honestly, I feel so bad because this might cost APC the presidential ticket, quite frankly. I have had calls from my Muslim brothers who expressed the same disappointment. And I am really sad that oftentimes politicians use the masses in the North to project their interests, as if the voters in the North, only religion is what guides them. They have been involved in electing people from the South, Christians from the South. And if you want to know a set of people who know how to play politics, I am telling you, it's the Northerners. If IPOB today is registered as a legal political party, You must see a northern candidate in the National Working Committee. He will either vie for secretaryship or the chairman of the party. This is their understanding of politics. But politicians, because of, and look at it, some of the politicians who push for this were not considered in the final choice of the running mate. There is another problem altogether. How will he manage them? That is one. When you talk about the generality of the Nigerian people, I don't think this decision is going to resonate with them. And in life, this is the first decision that our candidate of APC, now I have to say the candidate of APC, was confronted with. That decision defines your presidency. When you make a wrong decision at the beginning, you cannot convince people that your subsequent decision is going to be right. You see, Atiku Abubakar of PDP was also confronted with that. It was a popular idea that he chose Wiki. Now, he chose Okowa on principles. They have their own issues at the party. But you can see how everybody is now coming down to the realization that it was a choice that was for stability and for unity. As a country, everything we do must be guided by this consideration of the national objective. We need to bring people together. A united Nigeria is a prosperous Nigeria. A united Nigeria is a Nigeria of inclusivity. It's a Nigeria of inclusiveness. It's a Nigeria that understands diversity, and we have shared prosperity along this line. And a political party must lead by example. We are the ones that are supposed to be comfortable in making that decision. Because look at political parties that are desperate, they still balance the ticket. Why is it that conventionally people have consistently balanced this ticket along the way? Because people understood that even though there is no specific mention of that in the Constitution, but that is a true reflection of the spirit and intent of the Constitution. Why is it equity and fairness? Why is it that when the party chairman said that the party has taken a decision and it's going to be Ahmed Lawal, the governors, who often preach that the party is supreme, decided to save the party by saying, no, it's not going to happen like that. We have made a determination that we are zoning it should be zoned to the south for equity.
Well, Mr. Boala.
So that means equity is fundamental. And sometimes,
pardon me,
sometimes it's not just winning.
Okay.
You have to win right.
Right. You know, the natural question then would be, now that you have resigned from the APC, which will be shocking to a lot of people, really, because, as you've said, they know what you have done within that party. Where will the next destination be for you? Will it be the PDP? You've talked about the PDP. Will it be the Labour Party or NNPP? That's usually the natural question. So if you could quickly respond to that before I ask my next question.
Channels TV political party is my next destination. You know,
we don't want you, Mr. Boala. I'm sorry. We're not registered and we don't want you in it. Well, go ahead, please.
No, I'm just by the side. But you don't make a decision so hastily. I ordinarily, were it not for this decision that has been made, you may not probably have heard that I resigned. So you cannot just tomorrow morning and you switch to another political party. But we're going to be involved in nation building. We're going to be involved in the conversation along the line of unity, along the line of shared prosperity. And I am really going to be involved in the engagement in the North that will bring back the philosophy of Sardona, because I'm really concerned that how the North suddenly is getting fragmented. Okay. You see agitation in the middle belt.
Well, Mr.
You see people, minorities in the North getting, feeling somehow.
Right. I think the point has been made.
Bello, who instituted this foundation,
again, I need to comment.
maintain a very strong northern Nigeria that even the British government reckon with that.
Right. Let me take this to Mr. Magaji quickly and ask you quickly. So this decision has been made, and the candidate gave reasons saying that, you know what, this was essentially to compose the best team possible to forever establish just, capable, and compassionate governance. But it will seem both of you think that this is the wrong choice, especially seeing how far we have come, especially under the APC in terms of uniting Nigerians, the divisions and all of that. But you'd expect that these are people that should understand the problems of the nation. They should know where the people hurt, the pain of our nation, Nigeria. So if you could do this in a minute, why then will the candidate, or at least the party that you expect knows the challenges of our nation, go that route against reason, some might say?
I think it's politics. It's all about interest. I think somehow I have said at the beginning that there are many permutations, there are many scenarios that APC played around with. I'm a bit aware of some of the dynamics of decision making there because I still have some of my friends there. And I keep advising them that be very careful, this is your double-edged sword. At the end of the day, I think they are playing games. The word bribe is very appropriate here. By picking a Muslim northerner, they're playing sentimental politics. Honestly, I think they believe that they can woo northern Muslims and then keep the southern Muslims, and then because Tinubu is from the south, Christians from the south will feel comfortable. So there is aggregation of number in terms of the perception of how this will come out. But I honestly think it can go the other way as well, because a lot of noise will come out of this. I mean, the individuals aside, the individuals are competent. He has used the word competent, he has used the word balancing, he has used the word loyalty and commitment. I know Kashim Shettima is a very committed gentleman. The problem is that politics is about balancing interests. And if you don't balance interests, then you have a skewed platform. If you continue on that path, the geometric outcome of that decision, we do not know how it will unfold. And we do not know the magnitude of the outcome and how to manage it going further. So you could take just one step in politics. Like I always said, it's only in engineering that action and reaction are equal and opposite. In politics, they are opposite, but they are never equal. It comes in substantial, a lot more measures. So I will say that the decision has been taken. A lot of explanation, a lot of assuasion, a lot of cajoling need to be done. My brother here just left the APC. I hope they can reach him out. He's a very important member of the party. We need stability. We need to convince our brothers that we are not out to divide the country. But you see, the problem is these same promises were made by the APC. I was a member of the party. And like he just left, I left because I also convinced myself that I don't think I read the inaugural speech of the party and I look at our performance dashboard today, I can convincingly go back to the people and say, please, now the candidate is different. It's not based on candidate alone. And that was the mistake we made in 2015. The candidate can be as good as anything, but the platform, the people, the ideological inclination of the party, it's important. For now, APC, I think, has lost it. It was an experiment of change. It hasn't happened. It was an association of common interest that came together, and they have not been able to fuse into a political ideological
Let me quickly
platform.
come in there. I'd like to take it to Mr. Bwala. I wasn't quite clear in your analysis about whether a Christian from the north will be adequate compensation for the concern of the interest groups who were clamoring for a ticket of different faiths. Would it have been, is that what you're saying, that it would be adequate compensation, or on the contrary, it has to be a Christian from the south that would have been, that would have reflected the unity that the country is yearning for?
So this is not about compensation. This is about doing the right thing. This is about understanding the diversity of Nigeria. This is about understanding the people. This is about playing your part in promoting national unity. This is about coming close to the ideals of the Constitution. And this is about conviction. APC as a political party had faced this same thing in 2014, decided on the right path. Destiny and Providence proved them right, and they won and defeated Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. APC is confronted after many years with this same fact, and in fact, that decision is suggestive of what my elder brother said, of wanting to bribe the people because you did not or could not prove that you have done much to convince the people that your ideals and promises were fulfilled. So taking a Christian vice presidential candidate is communicating the message of unity to Nigerians, that we are diverse, but we recognize our diversity, and in all of our engagement, we carry that to there, because that way, we will convince our people that we are moving towards a one Nigeria. Now, I am not suggesting that if you take a Christian vice presidential candidate, you must win. because ultimately the decision of who wins is the voters that will make. And between when you choose the candidate to when people finally go to election, so many things happen. But you must come to a point in your life, either individually or as a corporate entity, to tell yourself, bring this ideal principle as graciously expounded by Eisenhower. Any political party that does not have in its very core an understanding of advancing a cause that is right and that is moral, that one is not a political party. It is merely a conspiracy to seize power. I have heard a lot of argument. People will say, our concern is just the vote. It's just the vote. We don't care about anything. It's just the vote. Now, when you say your concern is just the vote, you don't care about doing the right thing or leading in the right direction, can you contrast that, or can you apply that to our present-day life, where we're often faced with the decision that we will make for popularity, but it does not all go down well with the ideals of the people? For example, there was a time they wanted to introduce gay rights in Nigeria. The Society of Nigeria, guided by the Constitution, felt that wasn't the right thing. But that was what the Americans consider as the right thing. And the people tore in the direction of the conviction of the commonality of the Nigerian people and were able to stand. If you look at the division in the country today, so much division and so much fear, the fault lines are increasing. When you get the opportunity to be the governing party, it behoves of you. You see, it is not just opportunities that are also responsibility in life. You don't just take the benefit, and when duty calls, you fail to do what is the right thing. That is why I believe that this is going to cause...
what would you say to those who say that you're making an emotional decision?
Right. So they will have...
This is not a decision that is made based on available data, because sometimes we hear political parties do their polls before they make these decisions.
Right. So my decision, and it's a very good question, based emotional as against available data. Now, if I was to wait for any data analysis to say generality of APC, are you supporting that, yea or no, and then take decision, that means even then, my decision now will be based on what the general people are saying. I'm saying that my decision is purely based on conviction. I have expressed this opinion. This is not today. So how do you then bring emotion when almost close to a month ago, I expressed that on Channels Television, and I felt that that is not the true reflection of what a political party should do. It is well thought out. It is a matter of watching to see whether the political party will do the right thing. And by the time they took a decision that ran against my conviction, and let me even tell you, Maupe, and this is very important.
Out of time.
No, just 1 minute. You will appreciate that. You will appreciate that. Because somebody called and then celebrated me for that. You see, like you said, out of emotion, there are people who might even think this edition because he felt he would not benefit. I have had a sitting with the flag bearer before the primaries in his car, the privilege that many governors didn't have, where he personally promised me a role he wanted me to play, which will be a role that everybody in APC will celebrate. Everything is lined up for me as a reward. But it's not about that, it's about conviction.
Well, we'll see. The coming days, will be very telling. But how do you think that I don't know whether you're the right person to ask questions.
Let me say this.
Yes, so
this is very important at this point to say that we are getting excessively, aggravated by this. But this is the issue. The choice before Nigerians is more than APC. We should count ourselves lucky. 2023 present very, very good quality of people that are on the top of this ticket. All the 4 major political parties that I can think of, and even the other party, SDP, NRM, I know quite a number of the young people that are contesting. Peter Obi, Kwankwaso, Atiku Abubakar, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, anybody will do better than today's administration. However, the issue is there is a yearning for change. There is a yearning for change. And Atiku Abubakar has plugged into that, but Peter Obi plugged into that better. And Kwankwaso is mining that as well in the north. So I can tell you something. APC can continue this argument. Before they know it, momentum will shift against the party. There is a record to put them on a scale already, and they are making this decision that complicate our politics.
Well, they will
Peter
say
Obi is doing a lot. I led the party.
You can speak because I led the party. Member of the party.
But I'm talking about Peter Obi here.
Indeed.
Peter Obi is not in my party, but look at the momentum he's speaking.
Indeed.
I'm telling you, there are choices before Nigerians beyond APC today. And I can tell you, we will not wait for APC to clean up their mess. It's a cross they have to carry, and Nigerians will go out and vote. And I am very sure new voters are coming on, and it's going to surprise people by 2023.
It will be interesting to see just how events pan out and whether there'll be further. We've seen the first set of reactions and how the APC is able to manage this in the face of that. But you're certainly right that the people certainly have more than the APC as the choice if that's how they choose to go. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts this morning. Mr. Muazu Magaji is a former member of the APC Presidential Campaign Council. He's currently a member of the PDP and also the director of the Sahelian Center for Leadership and Development. And we've also been speaking with Mr. Daniel Bwala, who is a barrister at Lincoln's in London.
And a former member.
A former member of the APC.
Oh, no,
and also
APC.
political analyst. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily as well.
Thank you for having us. Thank you
We'll
so
take
much.
a break at this point, and we'll be talking about something that affects us all. Yes, politics does, but there's something more immediate and pressing than politics. In just a moment, please stay with us. Indeed, we're talking about security right now. On Tuesday night, last week, Tuesday night, the unthinkable happened right here in the Federal Capital Territory. The Kuje medium security prisons was broken into by insurgents, we've been told, and many of the inmates, about 900 of them, were set free. 500 of them have now been returned, but very disturbingly, over 60 Boko Haram suspects, some of them convicts already, were also let go of in that particular prison break. So far, so good. There have been some updates. Apart from those who have been retrieved, some of the Boko Haram terrorists, I think at least 2 of them, we have been told, have been brought back to the jail, but many of them are still at large. We're still waiting on the authorities to give concrete updates on what they're doing in that regard. So far, so good. The Minister of Interior, who is the one under whose charge the prison is yet to grant any interview in that regard. So also is the Controller General of Nigeria Prison Service or Nigeria Correctional Service, who is yet to also speak definitively in that regard. They have released statements. That's what we'll have to make do with. But considering just where we were and where we are right now, there has been no concrete update in that regard. Nonetheless, we'll continue to talk about the implications of this and what citizens can do to be on the lookout for some of these people, and if there's anything we can do to, put protective measures in place, because there are those who fear that there could be consequences as a result of this. Joining us to discuss this right now is Mr. Felix Obaudu, who's a former Assistant Inspector General of Police, and he's joining us here in our Abuja studios. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning, and Baraka de Salah to you.
I wish you same, and thanks for having me.
Well, I do not know if you saw that attack coming, if it was something, as a former AIG of police, did you receive it with shock as well?
Well, to a large extent, yes. Because had expected that all our correctional centers, or custodial, whichever you want to call it, ought to have had adequate security to guard against such jailbreaks, you know. And again, don't forget that most of the correctional centers we have nationwide, these are structures that were built many, many years ago. So it's very easy to break in and break out. But like I said, I wasn't surprised. And I got the sad news I got was that they had a team of soldiers who were there guarding the correctional center. But they were moved out, a new team was brought on board, or maybe the new team didn't know exactly what to do and all of that. But because of the facts that are now emanating, there was a lot of conspiracy within and outside. So it was an easy thing.
Well, this is what we have now been. I mean, some people will say the beans has already been spilled.
Spilled, yes.
There's no need crying over spilled milk.
Yes,
the question is, what can we do to remedy the situation?
Oh, sure.
A lot of people had talked about how they wanted to see the faces, if there was data on the people who, you know, were freed, especially for the 60-plus inmates who were Boko Haram suspects and some of them convicts. And we've seen that the Nigeria Correctional Service have put out that information now. But do you think that people will be able to identify people based on those pictures?
Well, to some extent, yes. But those who have out there won't be able to do it. I can assure of that. They won't be able to. It's only those ex-convicts who escaped that are known in certain communities that will be very, very easy to identify.
I'm looking at the photographs.
Yeah, those are the photographs there.
Yeah. One of them even is showing the back.
Yes. So I'm looking downwards and all of that. So it's...
but this should be clear enough for people to be able to help out, assuming they're able to, you know, they're able to see if they see any of these people in their communities.
Yes. But again, one other problem we will have too is that a lot of people get scared because if you rearrest an escapee, the fear is that there might be a reprisal attack on you who arrested him, either from his family members or from his gang members. So people want to stay away. That's why I have this nonchalant attitude. They're not interested in doing things like that.
But don't we have a duty to educate the public that the fact that these people remain within communities could be a bigger danger?
Yes. That heightens insecurity the more. You see, let me take you out a little bit. Some of these francophone countries bordering Nigeria, in their communities, if a stranger comes in less than 5-10 minutes, the village chief or the village head will be told, look, we have a strange person there. And the local vigilantes will pick him up. And they take him to the jail and ask him, who are you? What are you here for? And all of that. But his attitude is nonchalant. That's a problem. A lot of these things that are happening, people are aware. You can imagine kidnappings going on, people are riding motorcycles, a convoy of 10, 15 motorcycles. People are seeing their past and all of that.
From your perspective as a former security man, I'm sure you're still very much in the security world.
Yes.
When you analyze how our response has been in the wake of that jailbreak, would you say that we have handled it well in terms of our response and also in terms of how we've been able to mobilize the people to be on the lookout for these people?
No. We have not. We have not. In fact, there was a program I attended sometime last week. There was something I suggested. I said, look, we need to include security education in our school curriculum, right from the primary to the secondary to tertiary. We need to enlighten all Nigerians because on the issues, there are do's and don'ts when it comes to security issues. That will also go a very long way to help us. Then, of course, public sensitization in all the various media, be social media,
security in schools. I mean, that would be
and electronic and all of that.
Yeah, that would be a long-term solution.
No, it is not a question of long. These are things we can do now, but our response is, I know it's a long time.
No, what I mean is if you're going to put something in the curriculum, it cannot be a knee-jerk reaction.
No,
they have to understand how to put, what to put, and in such a way that students will be able to imbibe it. It will not be to solve this Kuje prison break.
No, we're not talking. I'm looking looking beyond that. I'm looking beyond that.
Indeed. So, but in the immediate, looking at what we currently have on the ground and perhaps the implication of what that could portend for the country, would you say that we're on the right track to actually solving the consequences of what happened in Kuje?
No, we're not. Now, let me start with this. The architectural design of all our correctional centers, those structures are too old, some are dilapidated. I was in the US some years back, and I had the privilege of going to a correctional center, the prison yard in Atlanta. If you see the structure, you think it's a 5-star hotel. And the access control is such that it is not easy for prisoners to escape. But ours is, you find a weak gate, somebody just comes, hits it with an iron rod or something, or a big stick, and the entire thing collapses, and they go and everybody's brought out. So if we can redesign all of those correctional centers, fortify them, so that anybody that wants to go there to attempt to release any detainees will have a rethink.
That's also long term.
Yes. It's not long.
Or medium term.
Let me tell you, it's not long term. It's not long term. We have the resources.
What I'm saying is that is not going to solve what has happened in Kuje. I mean,
no.
As they're rebuilding Kuje, first of all, they have to patch it up right now to ensure that, you know...
The immediate solution is to provide adequate security, intelligence gathering, you know? Like I used to say.
Do you believe that is currently going on?
No. That's what I'm telling you.
How do you know that?
If it was going on, these guys wouldn't have succeeded.
I'm saying now.
And from what they said, a good number of them were Okada riders within the community, and they had linkages with people that were inside. That was why everything worked out like that, easily. And they overwhelmed the few security guys that were on duty that day. And that takes us to one point I always made. Nationally, beyond the prison jailbreak, the number of security personnel we have in this country is grossly inadequate for the size of Nigeria and its population. If you take the police, for instance, United Nations ratio is 1 police officer to 400 persons. Here we are talking of a population of well over 200 million. We're having a police force of less than 450,000. Out of all that figure I just called, so-called VIPs have something attached to them. Some of these VIPs go about police officers, their plate numbers are covered with black nylon and all of that for whatever reasons. Instead of us to emphasize collective security, we're emphasizing individual security. That's what I once talked about overwhelming security nationwide. Some people might want to reject that, disagree with me. Oh, that if there are too many, people will feel threatened. But I say no. Because in the absence of security operatives, criminals are emboldened to carry out criminal activities.
So if you had the opportunity to advise governments right now in the wake of this jailbreak, and apart from what you talked about, the fact that we need to start security education right from, you know, elementary school.
Yes.
The fact that we need to take a second look at our prisons and, you know, determine what
restructure
yes. What else would you be saying we need to do right now? First, to prevent this from happening again, and also to bring back those who have escaped from the prison.
1, within every correctional center, there must be very, very effective, credible, reliable access control. You don't just drive in from the vehicle and that's the gate of the prison. No, it shouldn't be like that. There should be access control from one point to the other. And the center should also be well restructured, fortified, and secured. But access control is prime, is key. So the entire thing should be properly built up solidly. And if need be, it will be monitored all around, not just where you're coming in. You have people to monitor it. If you want to put CCTV, fine. Have CCTVs there, fine, that'd be very fine. But it's only one place to enter there. But most of these correctional centers, you can even attack it from whatever side.
What about bringing the inmates back?
Well, that is going to be a collective responsibility. The prisons officers cannot do it all alone. But what they need to do now is to keep on publishing their photographs in the newspapers and on television screens and even on the social media with their names. And I'm sure if they go into their database, they might be able to tell us even where they come from. These guys from Akure in Ondo State, these guys from Ikorodu in Lagos State, these guys from Oka in Anambra State, these guys from Port Harcourt in Rivers, these guys from Calabar in Cross River State, things like that. That will also go a very long way to help people. So when you see someone from a community, this is a familiar face. It's within the community.
So the faces need to keep playing out.
Yes, that's right.
In our consciousness,
yes, that's right.
People.
Precisely, because the more you see them, the more you remember. So that when you see them, say, this is one of the criminals. Just like the police arrested one of the Boko Haram suspects, escapees from a national state here, a few days back.
Well, we'll see how well they are able to take this advice on board and, you know, just what results they're able to reap from it. But we have to thank you very much for a very frank analysis this morning. Mr. Felix Ogbaudu is a former Assistant Inspector General of Police, and he's been speaking with us here in our Abuja studios. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, too.
We'll take a break now. We'll be back shortly to discuss just another matter. In a moment, please stay with us. Okay, let's start the conversation here. You've seen who we're being joined by. Professor Tony Iradia is a former Director General of the Nigeria Television Authority, a seasoned broadcaster himself. He's a Director of Public Affairs of the electoral body that contested the June 12, 1993 election. And he was also seconded to Liberia in 1997 as part of the ECOWAS team that conducted the Charles Taylor election. That's before he served as the Director General. Did you serve as the Director General of the National Orientation Agency as well?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, it's okay.
Many parts to you. Good morning, sir, and
morning.
Welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning. Shall I also say Baraka de Salah? You're suddenly dressed in the spirit of Salah.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
Indeed. Well, interesting times we have found ourselves in terms of where our country is. We're already gearing towards another election come 2023, and there's a lot going on in the political process. How would you rate how the electoral body, that's INEC, is currently managing that process leading up to the general elections? Would you say it's getting better? Or are there still many areas for improvement?
Oh, yes, it's getting better by way of technology. Yeah, the introduction of technology is a major development when you compare to the days before when some of these things were not there. And even when they were there was so much opposition from the political class for you to introduce technology, understandably, because it's easier to rig when you do manual elections. And even that opposition, as you can see, is still on till now. But the current Electoral Commission has been able to gain some leeway in terms of a few of the things they have introduced. But I think it's a great thing that you called me to talk about the management, because many people don't talk about the management of elections. We just think of only the election operations. Those operations have to be managed. There are two issues for me that I think have made elections quite hard for us in Nigeria. The first one is that we all have a very narrow definition for elections. We think election is just voting. That is not correct. Election is not just one event. It's a process of segmented events, of which voting is one of them. Before voting, there are many things to be done. Registration of voters, delimitation of constituencies, and so on and so forth. After voting, there's still also the counting of votes, the announcement of winners, and the installation of winners. So it's a full process, and this process has got to be sequentially managed. When it is not so, we run into a lot of problems. When we spend all our energies on what happens on voting day, then we've got it wrong.
Well, maybe understandably so, because voting in all of the process is the climax. It's where the people see themselves participating largely. I mean, apart from the Well, I say I'm looking for the word now to describe just what our voter registration process has been like, because people think it could be a lot easier. Herculean, maybe, might be one of the words to describe just how difficult it has been for a number of people to actually get registered. But when they do, it will seem that the reward is what they exercise on the day that they vote, and eventually wait to see who eventually was able to take the ticket, whoever it was that they were voting for. But that's usually where the focus lies for a number of people. There are those who even expand the entire, democratic process to also include after voting and how you hold leaders accountable. But what has given you concern in terms of this registration and delineation, all these other aspects which you say that we are ignoring?
Well, first of all, I'm not quite sure I agree about this definition of climax that you have just given. Because if you just take some case study, 1993, which you introduced me of, if the climax is voting, and the person that won was not sworn in, what is climax? See, if something goes wrong with the system, it affects the entire system. So we have to understand.
So for you, where would you say the climax lies? Is it when the winner is announced?
I would think so, because if a winner cannot take office, then the whole system is completely destroyed. We conducted an election that the international community regarded as the best ever in Nigeria, yet it was fruitless. So we need to place emphasis in the different segments. That's the point, really, and the coordination and linkages between these segments. That's important. To come back to your question, the issue of preparing for elections, I think that, yes, I'm a bit worried that for once, a large crowd is surging out to say they want to register. Now, there is an implication for that, which we must take cognizance of. It means that there is a likelihood of an increase in spoiled ballot papers arising from people voting for the first time, and therefore, who in the excitement thumbprint the wrong angle. Unfortunately, the political parties whose duty it is to mobilize voters and explain the process to people are not quite keen about that. They just call people or even bribe people to vote without thinking about the likelihood of this voting going well. Our history has shown that a large percentage of ballot papers are spoiled. So it's like they wasted the exercise. So efforts must be made to ensure that the system is well organized in such a way that we do not have, our votes will count. People think votes don't count only because of rigging. Votes don't count only because of violence. But there are times when votes don't count because of inability of the voter to know what to do. There's not enough of voter education. I think that we are all expecting the Electoral Commission to do it. But how can the Electoral Commission do voter education? It doesn't have the organs of mass communication. So it can only coordinate. It can only give out information. We still have to rely on the media and other organs of mass communication to help the public appreciate not only the essence and importance of elections, but what to do while you are there. And that's why I was talking about two things, really. I explained the first one. The second one is that there are more than one administrator in elections. We all talk of INEC. INEC is not the only administrator of an election. It is the ultimate coordinator, no doubt. But the nomination of candidates, for example, is done by the parties. The party is the electoral umpire in terms of the internal democracy system. How have they handled it? You can see what is happening. The politicians like experimenting with everything. We're experimenting up to the point that we have created a placeholder, in the system. Why do such things happen? Why will we be experimenting endlessly experimenting? We've been doing elections since, if we take 1999 to date alone, we've had a lot of elections. Is it not yet time for our elections to be seamless, right? Each time we have an election, there's always a recurring story, though in several proportions. That is that some people carted away ballot boxes up till the last one. It's always there. So why do we keep hearing 30,000 policemen sent to a state? So many national defense security agencies sent to the place. We hear all of that. As Osho is coming now, we're hearing so much about what they are doing. How is it possible that we have such a large crowd in one state of law enforcement agencies, and yet we still have cutting away of ballot boxes? So something is basically wrong. And what is wrong is that the politicians are creating strategies for frustrating the innovations made by the Electoral Commission.
So there needs to be a little more attention paid to other administrators of the elections. Let's flip this to Lagos, and I'm sure my colleagues have questions for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, good morning, Professor Heredia. Just wondering, when you speak about the election management process, you've highlighted some of the challenges, but what is it that you like to see? What would you like the voter to do in this case? Because for them, they look forward to that particular day where they need to step out there and probably get their votes, thumbprint, and then see how that turns itself out. But the election management process is a bigger scenario. Different groups have different things. Lawmakers have their role. So at the stage that we're in now, what should we be doing to ensure that we don't get it wrong?
Well, Chamberlain, you have hit the nail on the head. The different people have roles to play should understand the boundaries of their roles and should play those roles in a very coordinated manner. You mentioned lawmakers. A lot of people will not assume that lawmakers are part of it, but they are, because it is the laws they make that help to determine how the elections will be coordinated. You see what has happened now. The lawmakers have been so enthusiastic, so active about making laws. They've made so many laws, and in their enthusiasm, they forgot to protect their own interests. They made a law that made it impossible for many of them to now be in the system. That is what happens when you are making a law with people in mind, or making a law for the purpose of personal gains. If we have real electoral laws that are not experimented upon, it will be easier to have a very seamless election. That is for them. But the political parties, as you could see, they have not also shown any difference. They have not grown at all. They want every other person to grow, but politics is not growing. It's still being played in a manner that gives an impression that people are not doing the right thing. We should learn to do the right thing. As for the voter, we need to prepare them better than we are doing now. We need to make them organize to get the truth about what they want to do. First and foremost, I think that we should ensure that in the coming electioneering period, the candidates and the political parties are given enough time to do education and explanation of their manifestos. What most of them do is to create controversies. Once those controversies have been created, they drown the real essence of how the voter can know who he wants to vote for. You see, we talk about certificates. There are fake certificate holders. There are people in the system whose dates of birth are controversial, and so on and so forth. Those things should not be in the main issue of electioneering. Those ones should be in the courts. Anybody who has any problem with somebody's legibility should go to court. We should encourage people to go to court, get it done. In Delta State, we have just had an example of how a candidate has been disqualified because some people have gone to court to question his eligibility. So the eligibility issues should be left to the courts, while electioneering should be based on what the candidates say they want to do and how they want to do it. So we can know the difference between one candidate or the other. It is because we do not give enough time for this aspect of electioneering that you find a political party that will come and tell us we're going to do X, Y, Z. They get into office and say, oh, we didn't know it was this bad. How come you didn't know that it was bad before promising what you can do and what you cannot do? Or you get a political party such as we have now that goes into election and one of its prime objectives is buck passing. Excuses. Oh, the former party did this. The former government did that. The former government has left. It is you we have now, and it is you we expect to correct all that has gone wrong. We don't want to continue to hear stories of what the former party didn't do. if that former party was okay, we wouldn't have voted it out. Haven't voted it out and you haven't come, responsibility is on you to improve the system. So the main thing for people in elections to recognize is that the essence of government is development. Nigeria needs to be developed. We are looking for those who can develop it. It is not where they are from. It is not their background. Can they develop it? Can they make a difference? Can they change our system? Can they improve what has been on ground? If they can do that, then they are the best. But when we begin to blow cosmetic matters out of proportion and begin to look at issues that will not really inform the voter properly, then there won't be proper voting. Then we'll vote for persons we don't know. We vote for persons who can give us some money. And at the end of the way, we begin to regret for another 4 years. So it is time to settle down. The urge to vote now, the crowd, the extension of registration and all of that should not be for the purpose of just some people wanting to take advantage. It should be for us to do a better election. Each time we have an election, we are never able to say that it has really been much better than the previous one. So we see a lot of changes. Well, yes, good. Now today, the Electoral Commission has to be more careful. One of the things the Electoral Commission must avoid is the politicians dividing their ranks. Right now, we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing the politicians blaming certain electoral officials for their own misfortune. But the truth is that the Electoral Commission has no business with how you nominated your candidate. What it says, nominate your candidate, inform the Electoral Commission about the date of primaries, and then they come there to monitor. And when they have monitored, they write a report. The politicians want to reverse this. They tell us now, oh, the Electoral Commission is not responsible for candidates. That is not the point. Nobody is saying that the Electoral Commission should be in charge of candidates. What we're saying is that if the Electoral Commission monitor the process, the monitoring will be wasted if it's not utilized. If the political party can go back and present a result different from the one that was obtained at the point of the monitoring, then it's wasted. There's no need for INEC to come and monitor if the political parties have a right to swap the votes. So I think that these are some of the issues that we need to do if we must make progress in the management of elections.
Right, Prof, the media themselves have a role to play, as you highlighted in your opening sequence, but we'll talk about that and more when we return in just a moment. We'll be right back.
You're welcome back. We're continuing the conversation with Professor Tony Iradia, former DG of Nigeria Television Authority. Prof, it's good to see you again. And let me just go straight into this, really. Election management clearly sounds like it's not a job for INEC alone, because clearly INEC can't handle everything. In fact, the media has its role to play, of course, even though INEC has, you know, the voter education department and all of that. So how do you think coordination should work? Because you said they need to coordinate themselves properly. But if there's a voter education, there's security. I mean, monitoring the APC elections, I saw a lot of things and I'm like, INEC really needs a lot of help. So in terms of proper coordination, yes, INEC has the statutory responsibility to coordinate elections, but managing elections in itself, how should it go? Should we then have, election prosecution on its own, it's a whole new world that they're trying to get legislation to sort that out. So how do we approach proper coordination of the election management process?
Well, thank you, Coyote. The point has been made that there are many election administrators, and that is something that is rather new to people. Everybody calls INEC. You've just made the point that in terms of publicity, in terms of allowing the election to simmer down the public lines, INEC cannot do it because INEC is not an organ of mass communication. I think that INEC has taken the aspect of it, which is setting up a small unit on voter education. But INEC itself must not make the mistake of thinking that they are in charge of voter education. What they are in charge of is providing the information that other people who are giving a helping hand can use to make election more popular, more known, and more understood by people. In that wise, we need the media, other organs of mass communication like the National Orientation Agency. We need traditional rulers who are opinion molders in what in communication we call the two-step flow. That is, the people who get an information and pass it on to others. All of these people are important in voter education management system, and they must be allowed to play their roles. If they are not there, it becomes very difficult for voter education to take its place. Now, focusing on the media, which you have emphasized, I was just mentioning that the media does three main things that everybody knows: information, education, and entertainment. In this country, we have a lot of information being done by the media. And of recent, we have so much of entertainment being done by the media. What is missing is that middle function, education. And a lot of people tend to think that information and education are the same. They are not. Information, you give it out. Education, you ensure that what is given out is understood. Quite often, you use the process that is known as feedback. But the media cannot do that really, because you are not even visible to anybody, or you are not accessible to anybody. So we must take time to ensure that information that is given out is not just given out by way of transmission. It must be given out in a transactional matter in which the people that are being informed know precisely the essence of the information being given. So the media, whenever they are giving out any information, should ask themselves certain questions. This information is for what? Is for who? Is it easy to understand? If not, what can be done? So we have this principle of force multiplication, by which the media repeat certain things severally until such things stick. If that is not done, education has not been done. If you just come out and rattle out some information as news and you go away, not many people would have followed. In fact, there are people who will still be thinking of the first item of the news when the newscaster is already on the fifth item. So the next four will not even be heard, let alone understood. So that aspect of education must be prioritized. We need to do a lot of voter education about what voting is all about, the essence of it, and if we can do a lot of it, we will reduce this idea of voting for commercial purposes, where you buy somebody's voter's card or buy somebody's choice. If that person knows the implication of what he has done, many people will stop doing it. This idea of, oh, I see, this is the only time I can get something from the politician, whatever they give me, I will take it. You will begin to realize as time goes on with proper education that you are shortchanging yourself. Because when you vote for somebody who has no idea of what he can do to better your life, you are now guilty of your own self-involvement in what is hurting you. So we need to focus on all of this and let people know Prof. Why they must vote and who they are voting for, what that person is doing and what he has done before and what he now says he's going to do and how he says he is going to do it.
Much as we'd have loved to, continue in our pursuit of the subject on electoral management, we must manage our time now. Good morning, Prof. Let's now switch to another big subject, which also concerns the media. And we watched, the public hearing by the House of Representatives, during which the DG of the NB and your esteemed self happened to disagree a bit on the roles of the MBC and the Society of Nigerian Broadcasters bill, and you were trying to provide an explanation that we are now in a modern age and things should change. Perhaps you should, provide clarity on the roles of both organizations, to the extent that we understand that the SNB, when it gets legal backing, is not going to be replicating the role of the Nigerian National Broadcasting Commission.
Yeah, thank you very much. Honestly, I was shocked when I went to that event and it turned out to be that we disagreed, because I had expected that all of us are on the same page on this, because regulating professionals is different from regulating the system. And I think MBC should not think that regulating professionals derogate from the functions assigned to them. Their role is to get application for licenses, process those applications, and ensure that the right persons get the licenses. And then to bring out the processes of what should be done. And where there are breaches, the NBC will continue to have its right to sanction such breaches. But the point we're making is that the professional in the system needs to be improved upon. There's need for manpower, development. And you need a professional body because, as I stated at that public hearing, the best form of regulation is self-regulation. We tend to believe in this country that the media cannot regulate itself. It's only the rest of us that can regulate ourselves. The media cannot. I don't know where that came from. And I'm saying, let's look at how it is done elsewhere. We are talking global practices, best practices, or global realities. What is happening? Is this the way we are going to continue like we did in the colonial era, when the colonial masters came up with so many rules and regulations which were meant to stop the media from exposing what government is doing to the people? We can't continue like that. We have passed that stage. In fact, in Nigeria, we have had the very unusual opportunity of the Constitution giving the assignment to the media. That is what Section 22 of our Constitution says, that the media shall hold government accountable to the people. Now, with all the rules we are making, sometimes you hear, especially in places like Imo and all of that, somebody makes a statement that the governor doesn't like, he is arrested, and the accusation is that he's causing breach of peace, he's trying to be, in fact, he's accused of sedition, because he has said something that is the opposite of what the government of the day wants. We can't make progress like that. It is only when people criticize government and government sees the rationality in that criticism that it can change. So for me, I think that the NBC can even be a stronger body than it is now without disturbing the self-regulation claim of the media. I think the NBC should be given powers not only to compile applications for licenses, but to actually grant those licenses. That's what they do elsewhere. But in Nigeria, we pretend that NBC is granting license when it is not. NBC compiles it and sends to the government. I had a friend who got a license to run a station, a radio station. And he got it without NBC knowing that he was going to get it. So he put the license in his pocket, walked up to NBC and said, I have a license. Now that tells you that there's a political manipulation at the top, which we were trying to stop. So how do you do this? You ensure that NBC is an impartial body. People who have interest in politics should not be in NBC, right? The NBC should be an independent body that can regulate broadcasting. It should not be answerable to a minister of government who belongs to a political party and who will always want to close down the station that holds an opposing view to that of government. So those are the things that should worry NBC. For the Broadcasters Association, the things that should worry those ones are what are really the best way to do the job of broadcasting. Today, broadcasting is getting away very slowly from the general system of mass communication. It's not enough now to have a mass communication degree. It doesn't make you a broadcaster. We are getting towards the stage now where there will be a bachelor's degree in broadcasting. Right? When you come out of there, the processes of broadcasting become very clear. They are not really the same at all. In broadcasting, as you know, we don't write, we produce, right? And we are more concerned about illustration. You can't be talking in broadcasting without showing what you are talking. So you are not a newspaper. So the issues of broadcasting are quite different from the issues of other arms of the media. Therefore, the broadcasters should be allowed to regulate themselves and bring the best that can happen. For example, the NBC cannot regulate how broadcasters work. There's no way. They have put a code, for example, which says you need to have so number of years before you can be a manager, before you can be a general manager. It's in the code. When the owner of the station chooses his younger son or brother to become, without those, what will NBC do? Nothing. They have not been able to do anything because it's not practicable. And that's what they should leave to the associations to manage.
Yes, Prof, you just said that the NBC cannot regulate how broadcasters do their work, and that's exactly where I'm headed. In terms of infringement, you know, sometimes where broadcasts are concerned over something that has been said, over a visual that has been thrown up, and it doesn't adequately represent, you know, a circumstance or situation that is being broadcast on the air. Is this perhaps the area of concern of the NBC, that if the SNB now takes up this role of regulation, it will be an overlapping of responsibility?
I don't agree. My point is simple, that self-regulation is the best. When you have self-regulation, what you bring out clearly is the principle of social responsibility, where you know that so much has been given to you, and you have the responsibility to give so much back. But when you have somebody who's looking over you all the time, the tendency is for you to do what you can do. I want us to have a departure from the old system where regulating the media was like the form of policing, where the policeman stands at the traffic light to watch whether you will break it, and as soon as you break it, he arrests you, collects some money. That's not a regulating system that will be good for us. We want a system where the broadcaster is so knowledgeable, is such an expert, that the so-called infringements become very little, because much is given to you, so much is expected of you. I don't think that anybody can force it in the way that you want to use force to do it. That is why sometimes you find that that's the difference between the military and the civil populace. The military will come when they want to teach you something. They teach you in a very fierce manner. Oh, everybody must sweep his house on Saturday. That's environmental sanitation. Right. Whereas you can teach people how to sweep their houses without holding the whip, without holding a gun. And that's what we're talking about. Let the broadcasters learn the intricacies of broadcasting. Get used to it, know what is the do's and the don'ts. In that we call it media ethics. Those things are there. We don't need an outside body to show us. And that's the point. Besides, you see, when NBC regulates the media, we must never forget about this aspect of where do they get the instructions that they themselves use. Can the NBC tell me that all the things they do are done by themselves only? Of course, that is not true. There are instructions coming from government. And I'm saying in other countries, the NBC is not answerable, or the broadcast regulator is not answerable to government. For as long as it is answerable to government in Nigeria, it cannot regulate the media properly.
So, Prof, now, pardon me, Marco, just one more thing, Prof. From the look of things now, there are still stages that this has got to go through before it becomes law. You've talked about how surprised you were that NBC was on a different page. But after that hearing, I mean, it's clear that there has to be that understanding amongst the players so that no one feels threatened about anything. What do you think should be done now such that everyone, at least different groups, different institutions, see themselves playing their own role to the improvement and betterment of the profession and, by extension, the country, getting this bill signed?
I think that we can delineate what each person is expected to do. There are many things in broadcasting that the NBC should do and should be allowed to do. There's no problem with that as a regulating body. It's in every other country. It's not here. But it's like you saying that the Nigerian Medical Association should not regulate itself, or the Nigerian Bar Association should not regulate itself. You need a third party to be established that will be regulating them. I mean, that third party does not even know what the profession is about. And I think that is the issue at stake, really, that we must draw attention and draw a difference between the regulation of the system, as I said at the beginning, and the regulation of the performance of individuals in the profession. It's a professional body, and a professional body should be able to regulate itself. They are the ones, they are experts, they are the ones who can tell their members that this is what you must do and this is what you must not do. But if you want to do an external regulatory system by which, force is brought in, you will not achieve the result that we require. If you look at the NBC code, for example, it is filled up with breaches and sanctions, right? So, and it gives a negative impression of regulation. Regulation does not have to be negative. A simple example, in today's world, what is happening is digitization. That is what is happening. And what is digitization? It's about having several channels, presenting several programs. Now, these several programs, where are they coming from? Content, who is going to produce them? Right? That is what should be uppermost now in broadcasting, not the do's and the don'ts. We don't have enough programs now. If you tune to any Nigerian station well after 10, 11 in the evening, they're either repeating what they showed before or they are playing some musicals because they don't have enough content. And yet, that is what's required. That's what we should be emphasizing now. Content production. That is what should be emphasizing now. But NBC cannot, because it is not interested in those areas. It's more interested in, let's find out who didn't do what and who did what. Another that system, you find that it's just a master-servant relationship, which does not project professionalism. And we're talking about the need to have professionals. Today, you complain about the media because the practitioners in the media have not been given an opportunity to be experts. And we're saying the way to make them experts is to create professionalism within the system. A third body that is itself not an expert cannot bring that expertise to the media.
Do you think that despite the disagreement, the bill might still be able to sail through in the National Assembly?
Well, I don't think it's disagreement that will stop the bill from sailing through, because this disagreement can be sorted out. We can tell ourselves, we can sit down and say, NBC, this is what we think you should be doing. NBC will say, this is what we think you should be doing. NBC can say, these are our fears, all right? And if you can assure us of this is what we're going to be doing. So that's not going to be the problem. My own problem with the bill is that those who are trying to bring it up have to be more up to date about systems. We must look at what is happening elsewhere, right? What is the latest in this business? How should it be? It's not about people sitting down and claiming territorial jurisdictions. So we are the one here, therefore you cannot go there. No, we can work together.
Yeah, because this is, I mean, public hearing is like one of the last stages of the bill before it eventually goes back to the National Assembly for a vote to be carried out on it. So considering how the public hearing went, do you think it will have any effect on your understanding and maybe the general votes that will happen in the...
No, I think that the body, the committee that is handling it, has listened to everybody. They have a responsibility to determine which of those things that have been said that are persuasive. And so they can put down those things they think have made a point, and they can still gather more and see if NBC has objections. What are the objections? Which of them make sense? Which of them do not? And during that process of give and take, we should be able to draw a distinction. And I think it's because we've never had this distinction before. That is why there's a controversy. Otherwise, nobody, like I just mentioned, nobody will be arguing about whether we should regulate lawyers or regulate doctors, because they've always regulated themselves. And now we are saying, let the media grow to a level in which it can regulate itself. And then you see everybody say, oh, can we trust them? You've got to trust them, because if you cannot trust them, why do you go to them? When you have an assignment in this country, who do you go to? Is it not the media? Therefore, you must let the media grow and get to the level where it can do its job without anybody holding a whip at the back of the professional. And I think that is the point that people must begin to accept that we need to do.
We'll see how matters pan out in the following days, but we have to thank you very much for coming in this morning. Professor Tony Iradia is the former Director General of the Nigeria Television Authority, and he's also a Director of Public Affairs at the electoral body that contested the June 12, 1993 elections, and also was seconded to Liberia in 1997 as part of the ECOWAS team that conducted the Charles Taylor election, and has also served as the Director General of the National Orientation Agency. Once more, thank you for coming on, Prof. Well, that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Malbogun Yusuf.
Okay, Kiki here saying thank you for watching.
I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now.
I'm Chamberlain, sir. Goodbye.